Welcome to the Feast of the Most Holy Trinity. The first time I ever preached on the Holy Trinity was during my appointment as a deacon at St Canice's at King's Cross, the red light district of Sydney. I was the luckiest deacon in Australia because I had a 71-year-old Irish Jesuit parish priest, Father Donald Taylor, who never directly said no to any of my new or trendy ideas. He would simply say, "I'd be slow on that one." And it took me 3 years to work out that that was his version of saying, "No, don't do it." On the Friday before Trinity Sunday, I told Father Donald that I was going to preach that while Father, Son and Holy Spirit are clearly privileged names for God in the Christian tradition, they don't exhaust the possibilities. And so while we should be able to call God our perfect Father in heaven, we should be easily able to call God our perfect Mother in heaven, and that shouldn't cause any problems at all. To which he was doubled over in the chair saying, "I'd be slow on that one. I'd be very slow on that one." At the Vigil Mass the next day, Con, the most famous alcoholic and homeless person in King's Cross, was in the front pew, as he almost always was. And during my homily, where I gave out the maternity of God, God our Mother, Con jumped up about 2 minutes into it and expressed what was probably a majority position in the church. "God's not our mother. God's not our mother. Mary's our mother and God's our Father." And then he turned to Father Donald, who was saying the Mass, I'm the deacon, and he said, "Father Donald, this fella hasn't got a clue." And then he turned to the congregation, he said, "If you're listening to this BS, you need your head read," and with that marched out of the church. Sitting in the church that day were 160 young women from St Vincent's College, Potts Point, the boarders who came over for the Vigil Mass every Sunday during term time. At that moment, I had 160 girls who thought, "This is the best Mass I have ever gone to." I looked at the congregation, they were hysterically laughing. I looked over at Donald, he was crying, he was laughing so hard. And I turned back and did the only thing I could do in the circumstance. I said, "In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit," and sat down. That night, over dinner, Donald said, "Are you all going to give out the same homily tomorrow?" I said, "I don't know if you just noticed, it didn't go down a big treat." He said, "You leave Con to me." He swore at Mass, "I will not have it. Nobody should be swearing in the church. I will not put up with it. But I want you to give the same homily." I said, "Why?" I said, "I thought it wasn't your scene." He said, "Oh, it's not my cup of tea." He said, "I'm still coming to grips with God our Father, let alone throwing God our Mother into the mix." But he said, "There are plenty of Catholics and Christians who need to know that God, that Father, is not the only name for God. Because the problem for some of us is that when we name God, we think we can control God." And he said, "Last I checked, that's a heresy. And so get into the pulpit tomorrow, give out God our Mother, and you leave Con to me." I felt sorry for Con immediately. But what an extraordinary man. Wasn't his scene, and it may not be your scene either, but his teaching was perfect. No name, no concept, no idea captures God. God is not made in our image and likeness. We're made in God's, and God is greater and more than we could ever possibly say. The Trinity is not about how three goes into one. It's about how these relationships within God, we're invited into it. So may this Trinity Sunday see us name God, but more importantly, let's see us take the place in the relationship to which the Father, the Son and the Spirit welcomes every one of us.